Hey there guys, I'm back to another video. Today I want to talk about Spider-Man Miles Morales as we are less than 2 weeks away from the game's release, and in this video I'm going to give you guys a quick recap on pretty much every single important detail relating to the game, but also my thoughts on the game so far. So yeah, if you guys don't know me, I am a huge Spider-Man fan. I've been for the longest time. Spider-Man 2018 by Insomniac Games is by far my favorite PlayStation 4 game of all time, along with my favorite game from 2018. So when this game was initially announced during the PlayStation conference on June 11, 2020, I was obviously super excited. There is without a doubt like me looking forward to a Spider-Man sequel of any kind from Insomniac Games is definitely up there. And the fact that we get a sort of Spider-Man 1.5 focused on Miles Morales is super dope. If you guys don't know who Miles Morales is, he is a character that was introduced in the comics about less than 10 years ago, maybe 10 years ago at this point. He's a fairly recent comic book character, sort of like a newer comic book character addition to the Marvel Comics universe. And the fact that he's sort of recent and he's been making this much of a splash in mainstream media because of his appearance in this game, obviously, the Into the Spider-Verse movie, the cartoon show, like Miles Morales is becoming just as well known as Peter Parker is to other sort of kids these days. And that is very, very cool to see. And the way that this Miles Morales in Insomniac Games' universe differs from the comic book is by that the comic book, Miles Morales didn't have a sort of mentor like Peter Parker to sort of teach him the ropes of how to be Spider-Man. He pretty much had to figure all of that out on his own in the comics. And because of that, that version of Miles is very much different from this iteration of Miles Morales coming into this game. And the fact that he has Peter Parker to look after him and sort of mentor him over this past year, which is where the game takes place, is a year after the 2018 game, is going to be very interesting. So 1 year after the ending of Spider-Man 2018, Peter announces that he's going to go to Europe with MJ, while Miles is the only Spider-Man in New York. So that sort of makes sense for the plot and the gameplay. So when things are happening in New York, you're not going to wonder like, wait, where's Peter? Like, what the hell is he doing? Well, he's going to be in Europe. He's not even going to be in the United States. He's going to be in a different country. So yeah, and this gives Miles a chance to obviously come into his own, sort of learn the ropes of being Spider-Man on his own for the first time after a whole year of sort of being trained and mentored by Peter. The game takes place during the winter, and a war between a energy corporation and a high-tech criminal army has broken out. Miles has moved into Harlem, and Harlem is the heart of this war. So yeah, that sort of once again sets up the game. And because the way that the creative director Brian Horton wants to sort of make this game a completed arc for Miles that started in the 2018 game, he wants this game to sort of finish that off and be the I guess the later half of this coming of age story for Miles, which is very, very cool. And yeah, just overall, just like flesh out his character, make sure that by the time we get to a Spider-Man 2, when we're playing as both Spider-Men, I would assume, we are very much invested in both characters and maybe both of their stories. Maybe they'll have their own sort of like stories going on, sort of different perspectives on how things are going within this hypothetical Spider-Man 2, but I digress. Miles' mom in this game is running in an election rally, and we also get to see Genki Lee as a side character who is very prominent in the Miles Morales comic books, but hasn't been prevalent in any of the mainstream sort of media that I've seen. I don't think he is a prominent character in the cartoon show, and he was not a prominent character within the Into the Spider-Verse movie. So the fact that he is sort of taking not center stage, but you know, he is still a side character. The fact that he is in the game, period, is very, very cool to me in my eyes as a person that has read the original run of the Miles Morales comic book. The Tinkerer is probably the main bad guy behind everything, as far as I could tell from the gameplay and the news sort of tidbits that we've gotten. The Tinkerer is probably the main person doing all of this and is probably going to be the main bad guy we're going to take down at the end. So yeah, and some people have some theories about the Tinkerer. If you played the DLC chapters within the Spider-Man 2018 game, The City That Never Sleeps, you probably understand where those theories come from. I'm not going to spoil that because the DLC chapters are definitely worth experiencing if you haven't experienced them yet. But yeah, definitely interesting to see on how the Tinkerer plays out in this sort of Insomniac Games' universe. The gameplay that we saw in the most recent PlayStation 5 conference was super duper fun. It looked really, really fun to play, honestly. I love the gameplay for the 2018 game, and this game just looks more of it, just with Miles' own movement / animations, along with his shock / invisibility being used during gameplay. I'm pretty sure that that's going to play a huge factor into how this game plays differently from the 2018 game as well. The main combat, where you're sort of just like beating up bad guys, but also the stealth gameplay looks super fun as usual. And yeah, the gameplay looks more or less of what I would expect from a sort of Spider-Man 1.5 game featuring Miles Morales. The technical aspect for this game, because it is being released on the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. The PlayStation 5 stuff obviously is going to be the most interesting. Near instant loading times, ray tracing, 3D audio, and the DualSense controller. There's also going to be a performance mode for the PlayStation 5 version. You can play on 4K with 30 FPS or a lower resolution with 60 FPS. They didn't specify what the lower resolution was, but I would assume it's going to be somewhere between 1080p and 720p. So yeah, that is very, very exciting to see. But yeah, just like overall, like the technical aspects of this game being sort of being like, hey, we're going to try to push the PlayStation 5 to its, not limits, but obviously sort of like push it beyond what the PlayStation 4 can handle. Najee Jeter, the actor who plays Miles Morales, he did an interview with Game Informer, and he seemed super excited to play this character once again in the capacity of this game, sort of be the main protagonist and sort of come into his own as the Miles Morales character. He's been recording / mocapping for almost 2 years, which is kind of crazy, but it also makes sense when he talks about on how this game came about, where he knew, or when he knew that he was getting a standalone game was at the 2018 game's release party. So like when the 2018 game was coming out, I believe one of the guys at Insomniac Games came up to him and was like, hey, you know, like, what do you think about having your own sort of Spider-Man game with Miles Morales? And obviously he was on board with it. So very, very happy to see on how all that played out. So last things that you guys need to know about this game is obviously platforms, prices, release dates, all that good stuff. So like I said, we are less than 2 weeks away from this game's release. It is coming out on launch day for the PlayStation 5, November 12th, 2020. You can get it on the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. They're going to retail at $49.99, which is honestly a pretty good price point. For the Ultimate Edition, it is going to be $69.99, but that version includes a remastered version of the Spider-Man 2018 game, which that game itself looks very, very nice with its ray tracing, 60 FPS, all that good stuff. The fact that the remaster has new models, including the new model of New York City and the Peter Parker model, the 60 FPS, like I mentioned earlier, new suits, and sadly, the game will not see a separate release at the moment. So what I assume that this remaster is trying to do is that it's trying to push people to buy the game, but also sort of give people the incentive that want to replay this remastered version on the PlayStation 5 to be like, hey, you know, you can also get this Miles Morales game as well. So they're pretty much just trying to push sales for the Miles Morales game, despite the game probably going to sell a bajillion copies either way. But the whole Peter Parker model fiasco, I wrote a Medium article on it. Nowadays, I'm a little more okay with the model. At first, obviously, it is super shocking, super jarring to see this new face that Peter Parker has. But the reasons that they did it was to sort of match Yuri Lorenthal's performance a lot more, which hopefully that does match up when people do get around to playing this remastered version of Spider-Man 2018. So, but yeah, that is pretty much everything that you need to know going into Spider-Man Miles Morales. It is coming out less than 2 weeks from now, November 12th. Hopefully you guys are just as excited, if not more, than I am. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you guys haven't already, you can subscribe. I put new videos up on Saturdays. You can follow me on social media, Facebook and Twitter. I try to put updates on my future videos. You can check out my podcast over at anchor.fm/Travis Damian Podcast. We talk about games, movies, anime every other week. And that's all I have for today. Thank you guys for watching this video once again. I will see you guys next time with more videos.